Okay, we are on Tet Vav Amud Aleph, which is today's daf, 15a1. We did start it a little bit to present, at least initially, what the argument was between Abaye and Rava in terms of whether a lechi that was set up initially not for the purpose of Shabbos adjustment, whether that lechi is acceptable. And we saw that Abaye said it is a valid lechi because so long as people rely on it from the day before, okay, it's acceptable. Rava did not agree, right? And he said, no, it was not, because it wasn't initially placed there to adjust that mavui, okay? So that was where we sort of left off, right? So we are about 8 lines down on the top of the Amud on 15a1 if you're using Art Scroll. Okay? It follows. Kasal Gadatach, perhaps, says the Gemara, you might have thought, Kihechi de plige belechi, plige nami b'machitza. That again, where they argued, okay, and about whether or not a lechi was viable, a viable adjustment from the day before, that maybe they are going to argue also about a Korah, right? That whether it's a valid partition. Okay? Tashma, says the Gemara. Listen to the following. Okay? Ha'oseh sukato bein ha'ilanot, says the Gemara, right? The one who makes his sukkah among trees. V'ilanot dafnot la shera. And the trees are the sides, the walls of the sukkah. It's valid. It's kosher. Hacha b'mayis kinan. What are we talking about? Shenatnan m'tchila lekach. That he planted them for that initial purpose. Yahachi pshita. If that's the case, it's obvious, says the Gemara. Mahu detema. So what do you want to tell us? Ligzor dilma ate leishtamushe be'ilan. Maybe one should make a decree, okay, to say it's not valid, lest one use the side of a tree, okay? Says the Gemara, right? And making it sort of like a safeguard, right? Kamash malan, says the Gemara, that no such safeguard was enacted, and so therefore the trees would be a valid sukkah wall. So that would seem to imply, right, in our case, that even if that lechi was not initially put there as an adjustment for the mavui, so long and following the rule of the role of Abaye, the position of Abaye. Okay.
Kenny, is it only by the schach that we say that it has to be from the Talmush and not from the Kuba?
Right.
It's only schach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. Okay. However, the Gemara is not satisfied and comes again with another braita. Tashma, hayasham ilan o gader o chitzat hakenim. Let's say, says the braita, that you have there either a tree, or you have a fence, or you have a chitzat hakenim, what we might call it, say, a wall of poles or reeds. Okay. Midun mishum diumad. Okay, maybe, okay, we would judge it similar to a double board. Now, what's a double board? Okay, if you look in the Rashi, okay, next to Hagaus Habach, you'll see a small diagram there, okay, of what might be considered a double board. Okay, now, what are those double boards? Rashi wants to tell us in the future, in other words, coming up in the Gemara, we're going to deal with a way that the Chazal determined how to adjust the area around a well. And as part of that adjustment was such that you need to put up these diumadim, two-sided boards in corners. Okay, and by doing so, so long as you had more area covered, in other words, standing, than the breach, the area within the four, I'll call it corners, four sets, the four double boards, that area surrounding the well would be considered also Reshus HaYachid, okay? Which would therefore allow people to lower a pail, get water out of the well, etc. Because the wells were normally 10 tfachim at least deep, which would have made them a separate reshus. Okay, so that's what they're saying. Those situations where you have a tree or you have a fence, all right? By the way, they usually assume a stone fence, okay, made out of stones, or a wall made out of, as we said, reeds or poles, okay? Nidun mishum diumad. It's determined as if it's this double post. Achanami b'mayas kinan. Here, what are we talking about? She'asa'an mitchila lechach. Here we're saying, no, maybe they put it initially. Ihachi mai kamash malan. If that's the case, what are they coming to try to teach us? Okay. Kamash malan chitzat hakenim kaneh, a wall of, let's call it reeds or poles. Okay. Kaneh, one pole at a time. Pachot mishlosha, so long as the gap between the poles is less than 3 tfachim, mishlosha tfachim, kidabai mine abai mirava, as was asked, right, from Abai, from Rabbah. Okay? So if that's the case, all right, okay, and we didn't get to this issue yet, that doesn't come up till 19b, but Rabbah answered him that such a wall of reeds is considered valid, just like the double board that's used around the well.
But it doesn't make sense, Rabbi Green, because if reeds are going to be 3 tvachim, the whole idea was to be able to bring your animals close to the well to water them, right?
Oh,
Otherwise,
I'll get to that, Bob.
Okay.
Question. Good question. We're going to get to that. In other words, I'm going to phrase it a little differently and say, your question is asking me, what about the breach between the diumodim, the double posts? Okay, if the breach is too wide, then we have a situation like we've seen before, where the open space is greater than the standing space. And we've said that certainly for a chatzer, it doesn't work as an adjustment, right? Okay, but maybe we're going to see that there's a kula involved with these wells. All right, so we will, as I say, we will get to that. In the meantime, the Gemara now wants to try to show another proof. Okay, so far it seems, up to this point, I would say it seems acceptable, the perspective of Abaye, but in every case the answer has been similar to the answer of Rava, that maybe it was made that way
from the beginning.
Okay, so we have not really totally completely proven Abaye's argument. Okay, let's go on then. That's why the Gemara tries again. Tashma, ilan hamasich al haaretz. We have now a tree where the branches extend all the way on, almost to the ground. Okay? Right? Im ein nofo gavoa min haaretz shlosha tfachim. Okay, if the branches, I don't know what you would call that, I forget in English. Okay, the dip, whatever, of the branches come, all right, to less than 3 tfachim. Okay, in other words, that's the question. If it hangs within 3 tfachim of the ground, okay, what happens? Metaltalin tachtav. It's permitted to carry underneath it. Okay, which would seem to imply, right? Again, that's reshus, right? That they're using that as a private domain. Hachanami b'mayaskinan, says the Gemara. What are we dealing with here, right? Shenatnu mitchila lechach, that they planted it purposely that way. Ihachi, if that's the case, is the Gemara. Latitul bakulu, let them carry it underneath the entire tree, not just under that branch whose foliage, okay, hangs down. Alma, all right, or alama, right? Why is that the case? Amar Rav Huna b'rei Rav Yoshua, ein metaltalim bo ela beit satayim. Okay, that one may not carry it unless the area is larger than a beit satayim, about 5,000 square amos. Mishum dahave dira shetashmisha la'avir. Why? Because that location has been designated what I'm going to call a temporary guardhouse or a temporary habitation to be used for a person to supervise or watch over areas that are beyond it. Okay, right? It's like a shade area that the guard stands to look out onto the produce area, the fields. B'chol dira shetashmisha la'avir ein metaltalin ba. But we say that any habitation whose use is for the, let's say, as I say, guardian of the outer area, we don't carry in it. Ela beit sa'atayim, unless it is the area that has to be watched is beit sa'atayim, is that area of the enclosure. Okay. Now, again, about the following, Tashma. Let's come to another argument. The following, okay, Shabbat Batel. Okay, the person was traveling, and he had to make his Shabbos residence on some sort of a hill or a mound. Shehu Gavoa Asara, that it's higher than 10 tfachim. Vahu arba amot, and not only that, but it's an area that's at least 4 amos around it. Va'ad beis sa'atayim. Okay, and it's also in an area of beit tusea. B'chein benaka, or likewise, let's say the person had to make their Shabbos residence in a valley, a cavity. Let's say, I don't know what, okay?
Cave.
What?
A cave?
Not a cave, but we're talking about a deep valley, okay?
Wadi?
Wadi, something like that, okay? V'chein benaka, a cavity. Shehu amok asara, and it's at least 10 tfachim deep. V'hu me'arba amot va'ad beit sa'atayim. And the sides of this cavity, right, is at least 4 amos high, right? And it's in an area of 2 seah, right? Okay, or let's take another example, all right? That the person has been out in this field, V'kama ktsura v'shibolot makifot ota. And what he did is he had chopped grain, okay, stalks of grain, and bundled them up, okay? And he was able to make almost like piles of grain in an area, okay? And these piles of grain are such that they reach a height, okay? Of course, Arba Amos, right? Mahalech et kula. Okay, he can walk around inside that entire area. V'chutzala alpayim ama. And outside of it, as if it's a normal Shabbos tchum, 2,000 amma. Right? V'chi tema, and if you want to say, hachanami she'asa b'tchila, if you want to say that he did it originally, remember which was Rava's argument all along. It was done for that purpose, right? Mitchila lekach, bishlema kama. That's acceptable if we talk about the bundles of grain, of cut, reaped grain. Lechi, okay, okay. Lechaye. So here we would say, all right, elatal, vanaka. But if you're talking about a hill, or you're talking about a deep cavity in the ground, okay, what are you going to say then? So the Gemara continues, Ela b'mechitzot kuli almalo plige, dehavya mechitza. But rather in regards to petitions, everyone doesn't disagree in terms of petitions. Ki plige belechi, but they're arguing about the issue of a lechi. Abai letame, the amar lechi mishum mechitza. Why? Because Abai holds, according to his reasoning, that the lechi comes to symbolize a partition. Umechitza ha'asuya me'aleha havya mechitza, and a partition that was made simply for the purpose of a partition, okay, by itself, okay, is still considered a partition. V'Rava l'tame, and Rava argues according to his view, the Amar lechi mishum heker, that he's saying no, the lechi comes as a viable visual reminder, right? I avida biyadayim havya heker, right? If it was made by hand, in other words, if it was purposely put there, then it is a heker. V'ilo lo have heker. And if not, it's not considered a valid heker, a valid sign. Okay. Did we come to a decision? No. Okay. They still argue, and they still hold basically different purposes for the lechi. Okay. And so they're still not in agreement. And we still haven't proven whether that pre or standing lechi was viable. Is it valid adjustment? So we come now, of course, to another attempt, another proof. Okay? Tashmas is the brighter. Avne gader, hayotzot min hagader. Let's say we've got some stones in a stone wall where the stones are sticking out further. Muvdalot zomizo, pachot mishlosha. If the stones are separated one from another less than 3 tfachim, ein tzarich lechi acher. The Braita tells us that we don't need another lechi. Shlosha. If, however, the distance between the protruding stones is 3 tfachim, 3 lechi acher. We need another lechi. Hacha nami shaban'an mitchila lekach. Maybe here too we're going to argue that he built it initially that way. Ihachi, if that's the case, pshita, it's obvious. Mahu detema, what do you want to then tell us? La mesa binyana huda avida. Okay? So, in other words, maybe he built it to connect one building or one part of a building to another part of a building. Kamash Malan comes to teach us that that's not the case. Let's try another proof. Tashma, Tatani Rabbi Chia. Said Rabbi Chia taught as follows, the following. Okay? Kotel Shetzido Echad Kanus Mechavero. We have the fact that the wall of the Mabui is such that one wall has a dent and is indented further in, right, than the rest of the wall. Bein shenir emi bachutz v'shava mibifnim, whether that can be seen from the Reshus Harabim outside, but it looks flush inside the Mabui. Ubein sheniremi bifnim v'shaveh mibachutz, or whether that indent can be seen inside from the Mabui, but it seems flush from the Reshus Harabim looking into the Mabui. Nidun mishum lechi. It may be determined as a valid lechi. Hachanami she'asau mitchila lekach. Maybe here too, it was particularly built that way, as Rava has been arguing, for that purpose. Ihachi mai kamashmalan. If that's the case, what does it tries to come to teach us? Hakamashmalan nir'emi bachutz v'shaveh mibifnim nidun mishum lechi. It does come to teach us that if this indention, okay, can be seen from outside, namely from the Reshus Harabim, looking into the Mabui, and even though it may seem to appear to be flush as part of the wall of the Mabui, it is still considered a valid lechi. Okay, Tashma, says the Gemara. Let's listen to the following, another attempt of a proof from the following example. The Rav Haviyativ Bahahu Mavua, that Rav was sitting one time in a certain Mabui on Shabbat. Haviyativ Rav Huna Kame, and Rav Huna was sitting before him, right? Amale Lashame, and Rav Huna, I believe, said to his servant, right, to his attendant, Zil Aite Li Kuja Damaya, come and bring me a pitcher of water. Ad da'ata nafal lachya, until the servant came back with the pitcher, the lechi fell down. Achve la biade, he signaled him with his hand to stop. Right? Kam aduchte, he stood in his place, the servant. Amale Rav Huna, says Rav Huna, lo savar lamar lesmoch adikla. Doesn't the master hold that one could rely on that palm tree that happens to be standing at the entrance of the Mabui and use that as a kind of lechi? Amar, he says to him, Dami hai mi rabbanan, kimandelo parshe inshe shmata. Okay, so his response to him is basically, what he's saying is, when Rav Huna asked the question, when Rav asked the question, Rav Huna responded, Dami Hai, this one of the rabbis is acting as if nobody ever explained him any of the lessons. Mi samchinan alemi etmo, did we rely on that palm tree from yesterday? Tama de lo samchinan, which implies that they didn't rely on it. Ha samchinan have lechi. Had they relied upon it, it would have been considered a valid lechi. So the Gemara now continues and asks the following question. Okay, perhaps we need to understand it this way. Lema Abai v'Rava b'delo samchinin alei plige. Maybe Abai and Rava's argument is on a situation where they did not rely on it. Maybe that's what they're arguing about. Ha samchinin alei havai lechi. Had they been relying on it, it would have been considered a valid lechi. No, no, says the Gemara. Salka da'atcha dahahu barka. Okay, says the Gemara, don't even think about that. Okay, why? Because we could say, what about the following porch? Okay, or maybe let's call it balustrade or something like that. Okay, right? Like in Israel, they have porches that stick out from the side of the house, of the apartment. Right? Dahavu barka, dahava be trei chavu dahavu plige. Okay, that regarding this, Abaye and Rava argued many years over this. Okay, whether that was going to be a valid heker or pechitza, right? Bar chavu dahavu plige ba, Abaye v'Rava kuli shanaihu, and they argued about it over all these years. Okay, new Mishnah. Let's go on. All right, what are we going to talk about in this Mishnah? What do you think? What can we make a lechi from? Okay. Right. We've seen now the discussion that it could be an indented part of the wall. Okay, so let's see. Matnitin our Mishnah b'chol osim l'chayim. With anything, it seems to say, you could make a lechi. Afilu b'davar sheyesh bo ruach chayim, even with something that's alive, a live animal. Rabbi Meir oser. Rabbi Meir forbids using a live animal as a lechi. Umetame mishum golel. Not only that, he says, but a living thing can also transmit tuma when it's used as a covering for a tomb. Okay? But Rabbi Meir metaher. But Rabbi Meir, in that case, would render it tahor. V'kotvin alav gitei nashim. Okay, and you could even, just as an aside, if you could write on this item a get for a woman, the Rabbi Yossi Aglili posel, and Rabbi Yossi Aglili renders it invalid. Now, okay, the Gemara is going to pick up and cite a Braita. Tanya, what does it teach us? Rabbi Meir Omer kol davar sheyesh bo ruach chayim. Anything that is a living item. Okay? Ein osin oto lo dofen l'sukkah. We're not permitted to use it as a wall for a sukkah. Velo lechai lemabui. Right? Velo lechi lemabui. Can't use it as a lechi for a entrance area to the alleyway. Lo pasin lebiraot. You can't use it for the planks, right? We talked before about the double, right? Remember, we used that phrase, right? The double posts. Okay.
Double board.
Right? The double boards or the double posts surrounding a well. Okay. So again, that's coming up here, right? Velo goleh lekever, nor you can use it as a covering for a tomb. Okay. Now, Mishum Rabbi Yossi, in the name of Rabbi Yossi HaGalili Amru, Kotvin alav gitei nashim. So likewise, you can't write on a living thing a get for a woman. My Tama the Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. What's the reasoning of Rabbi Yossi Aglili? The Tanya, why? Because it's taught sefer. It means a book, right? It says sefer kritu. Ainly ella sefer. It means it's got to be something viable as a book. Minayin the rabot kol davar. How do we know that that could include any kind of item? Okay. In other words, something else that you could write on. Talmud lomar v'katavla mikol makom. It says, and you write on it, which means of any kind. Im kain ma Talmud lomar sefer. If that's the case, why did they use the word sefer? Lomar lach ma sefer davar she'ein bo ruach chayim ve'eino ochel af kol davar she'ein bo ruach chayim ve'eino ochel. Okay, so therefore, likewise, tell us sefer implies it can't be a living thing or a foodstuff. V'rabanan mikatav b'sefer, and the rabbis. So what is for the? How do they understand the purpose of the word sefer written in the book? Sefer kativ l'sfirot dvarim ba'alma huda'ata. Okay, why? They say because it comes to tell us, so to speak, the progression of things, the narration. And that therefore, based on that, that's how the marriage is separated, is ended. V'rabanan, v'hai v'katavla, ma'i darsheve. And as far as the rabbis go, when it says, and you write it, how do they expound it? That they say that only through writing is the woman divorced, and she is not divorced by use of money. Now, we're getting a little side discussion here, right? Okay. Salka da'atach amina. It's possible I might have thought that there's an association between going out and existing. In other words, between leaving the marriage and being in the marriage. Mahavya bekesef. Right? The same way being in the marriage can be accomplished, I'm going to say, through money, right? Remember, it starts off there, bekesef, shtar ubia, right? When it talks about that, af yitziyah bekesef. So I may have thought then that leaving the marriage also could be done through money. Kamash malan comes to teach us that that's only a written item is usable for divorce. So let's now go back to the following. Okay, the Rabbi Yossi Aglili, remember he said you could, right? Hi svara minale. On what basis does he say this? That it can't be on writing? Nafkale mi sefer kritut. He derives that same halacha that it can't be written on a living animal, okay, from the fact that the pasuk says it's
Sefer pieces.
A sefer kritut, right? A document of cutting, separation. Sefer korta ve'en davar acher korta. A text, okay, separates, something else does not separate. Okay, v'rabanan, and as far as the rabbis go, hai sefer kritut, this phrase of a text of separation, mibayale ledavar hakoret beino leveina. That's what requires to separate something between him and her, the Keditanya, as taught elsewhere in another Braita, Tegitech almanat shelo tishtei yayin. Why? Because it says, if he says to her, here's your get on the condition that you don't drink wine, almanat shelo telchi lebeit avich leolam, or on the condition that you never go visit your father forever,
Get it this way.
Zekritut, that is not severance. Okay? Kol shloshim yom, right? If he says you can't visit your father for 30 days, Harei zekritut. That is considered separation. Severance is after that time. Right? V'Rabbi Yossi Aglili, nafkale mi karet. Okay? Does he get it from karet? From the word karet? Kritus. The favorite says sefer kritus. In other words, plural. Right? The Rabbanan, karet kritut lo darshe. And the rabbis, however, don't darshan out that part of the double language, okay, of karet and kritut for the longer word. Okay. Going on now to another Mishnah, moving along. Okay, here we're going to get another scenario, okay? A different quick image. Caravans traveling, right? And what happens? The caravan has to stop for Shabbos. How do they make an Eruv? Okay? If we're saying that you can't use a living animal, which we just got through discussing, to make the, right, a lechi or an Eruv, really, what do? Right? What can they do? So the Mishnah tells us, Shayara, Shechanta b'bik'ah, okay? If we have a caravan and it's had to camp, I'm going to say, all right, in a open field or in a valley, v'hikifua klei behema, and they surrounded their camp with the equipment that had been on the animal, okay, the blankets, the saddles, things like that, right? Metaltalin betocha. It's permissible for them to carry within the camped area. Ubilvad sheyehe gader gavoa asarat tfachim, so long as the walls of what they made is at least 10 tfachim high. V'lo yiyu pirtzot yetedot al binyan, and so long as the breaches are not more than the amount of, so to speak, built up walled area, called pirtza shehi ke'eser amot. In other words, that each breach, the space, okay, is not more than 10 amos. Muteret mipnei shehi kepetach, because we say then that those are simply like openings, doorways. Okay, not exactly doorways, but openings. Yeter mikan, but more than that, asur. It would be forbidden. Itma. Now it was said, says the Gemara, parutz ke'omed, when we said that the breach is equivalent to the walled area. Okay, Rav Papa Amar Mutar. Rav Papa said there that it was permitted to carry inside. Rav Huna Bereda Rav Yoshua Amar Asur. Rav Huna said it was forbidden to carry there inside. And so now we explore this machloket. Rav Papa Amar Mutar. Okay, Rav Papa said it's permitted. Why? Hachi agamre rachmana lemasa lo tifrotz ruba. Right? Why? Because the Holy One, right, Rachmana, okay, taught Moshe, okay, that one should not have more openings, okay? In other words, don't leave it mostly open. Rav Huna Bereda Rav Yoshua Amar Asur, he says it's forbidden. Hachi agamre rachmana leMoshe. This is what Hashem taught Moshe. Gedor Ruba, namely he taught him that you have to fence most of it. Tznan, v'lo yiyu pirtzot yeterot al binyan. And therefore we have a Mishnah. that clearly says you cannot have the breaches, the opening, more than what
And the
is
shower part.
ha-kibinyan, which would seem to imply that if the breaches were equal to the amount standing, the amount mutar, it's permitted. Lo tema ha-kibinyan mutar. But the Gemara then goes on to say, don't say that it implies that if it's equal to the amount of built or standing, it's permitted. Ela ema, but rather I would say, im binyan yater al hapirtza mutar. If what was built is more than the breach, then it's permitted to carry. Aval kibinyan, but if it's equivalent to what's built up the sides, mai, what is it? Asur? Is it forbidden? Ihachi, if that's the case, litne lo yiyu pirtzot kibinyan, then simply teach that the breaches shouldn't be equivalent to the standing area or the built area. Kasha. Indeed, this is problematic. Okay, so our Mishnah, our Gemara brings a Braita now. Tashma. Listen to the following Braita that we try to use as a solution. Right? Okay. What do we have? Hamikare sukato b'shipudim. One who is going to cover his sukkah, okay, with metal skewers, okay, o ba'aruchot hamita, or with bedposts. Im yesh revach beinehem kimotan, if the space between them is like them, shera, that is valid. Hacha b'mayis kinan, what are we talking about? Kesher nichnas v'yotze, okay, a situation where the spit can go in and out easily. V'ha efshar letzamtze, okay. Here you say, but it's possible to be exact. Amar Rabbi Ami, says Rabbi Ami, b'ma'adif. We're talking about a situation where one enlarges the size of the gaps, okay, so that it's more than the width of the spits. Rabba Amar im hayu netunim arev, not no sheti. Rabba is saying if he put the spits in one direction, okay, and the other, okay, in the opposite direction, one goes lengthwise and one goes horizontal, okay, tashma, okay, maybe that would work. So therefore there's a Tana, okay, comes back now to our issue, all right? Maybe that's the case. Maybe if that works for the sukkah, maybe we're going to apply that in our case. Tashma, says the Gemara. Another Braita. Shaira shechanta b'bik'ah. Coming back, the Braita, similar to our Mishnah. The caravan that encamped in the valley or in an open field. Vehikifuha bigmalim. Okay, and one surrounded them with camels, right? With their saddles. Or let's just go over a tiny bit on Tet Zayin Amud Aleph. Ba'avitim, or with the cushions that normally go on the animals. Ubeshlifim, or with bundles. Ubekanim, or with reeds, okay? Or bekulachot, or with stalks of vegetables. Metaltalin betocha, one can carry within this enclosure. Ubilvad shalo yihei ben gamal ligamal kimlo gamal. So long as between one camel and another, there isn't a camel's amount of opening. Ubein okef laokef, or between saddle to saddle. Kimelo okef, the width of a whole saddle. Ubein avit laavit, kimelo avit, or between one cushion and another, the space of a cushion. Hachanami kishen nichnas v'yotze. Here too, okay, maybe we're saying that this is something where the gap between one object and another, okay, that it's similar, that one can go in and out easily, and therefore the gaps may be larger than the covered or standing area, which would render it not valid, right? So here is where we're going to pick up tomorrow, okay, where the writer is going to try to bring proof, okay, in terms of the style of partitions as to what's acceptable, okay? And that's where we'll start tomorrow. All right, guys? Everybody stay well and take care.
Have a good day. Thank you. See, we come up with some new questions.
Okay, very good.
Often we'll work on it.
Yeah, okay. So long.
I'm still looking to find.
Have
I'm
a
still
good day,
looking to
everyone.
find who's checking the Eruv now.
Okay, well, we'll see if we can find out, but it may wait till Rabbi gets back.
Oh, is that what it is?
Well, we'll find out.
Oh, we'll have a lot of questions when he comes back.
Marvin, naughty.
No,
Okay.
no. Okay.
Have a
Have a
good
good
day.
day, Harvey.
Bye.